everyone, and welcome back to Sharon Cullen Art. Today I'm doing a requested video. Actually, two people requested different things and I thought I could combine them into one video. So that's what I'm going to do today. Somebody asked me what my favorite palette was. Well, she didn't specify. This is my favorite palette. It's kind of a mess right now, but my favorite palette contains all of my current colors, or most all of my current colors. These are all Daniel Smith colors, except for, excuse me, this yellow, I think is PWC. And this one might be also, it's either that or it's New Gamboge by Daniel Smith. They look so similar. And other than that, that's pretty much it. These little colors down here are colors that were given to me by Mojo Designs over on Instagram. She sent me a little package, a gift of a bunch of little goodies a few months back. And this is Amazonite, Quinacridone Lilac, and Graphite Gray, all three of which I did not have in my palette. So it was really nice to get these colors. And then this was my German Green Raw Umber. And I have Raw Umber over here. That one might be a Rembrandt. I can't remember. But for the most part, these are all Daniel Smith colors. But I'm not sure that's what she meant, because everybody loves their big palettes. So I've used several different travel palettes over the years, and they change. My favorites change, and they can even change with the seasons when I'm doing landscape paintings. But right now, I had made this palette for myself back when Daniel Smith was advertising their palettes for their pan palettes. I thought, wow, I've got all these colors. Why would I ever need to buy one? And so I decided to make my own. And these are all wet because I just had a major mishap. I went to spray these with water, and hang on a second. I have to kick the dog out. Anyway, I went to wet these down and I accidentally wet them with Windex. So then I dunked the whole palette quickly in my water because I couldn't find my big water bottle. And then of course one of the watercolors fell out of the pan, so I had to grab it out of the bottom of the bowl and put it back in. Oh my gosh, what a mishap. But now they're all moist. So, and I hope the Windex is gone. I can still smell it a little bit, but it could be on the edge of the pan. So anyway, this would be my current favorite palette. Now, the other person who requested, and I'm going to get into this a little further, the other person requested a video on mixing colors. She says she cannot consistently mix colors. And so I'm going to show you a few little tricks that I do on my color mixing. And she specifically asked about mixing greens for grass, trees, etc., and mixing colors for sand, and mixing colors for straw or hay. She has problems with those. So it could just be that you need to buy another color. But when I get to my colors on my big palette, let me just close that for a minute. On my big palette, I have many greens, as you can see. I have 3 here, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. So 9 greens that I have. And I've bought them over the years. And a lot of these greens, I don't even have to mix. Now, these colors you're seeing underneath are just ink. I have trouble with this paper taking ink when I stamp. Now, that first color, these are Daniel Smith. That first color was called green, rich green gold. This one is olive green. This one is sap. They also make a deep sap that I'm very interested in, but I don't need it. This one is hookers. I hardly use this green, but I used to. When I first started painting, I used it a lot, and I used it for mixing my other greens. This next one is jadeite. Genuine, which is a beautiful color that I love. Nice, rich, deep green. That's great for pines. And now get into, this one is Rare Green Earth. That's another one that I really like. I like them all. This one is Undersea Green. And this one, wait, is that the one I just did? Yeah. Let me see where I'm at here. Undersea Green. Then Green Apatite Genuine is next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, that's what I did. This is Green Apatite Genuine. A lot of people, this is a very popular color. And I like this, but I don't use it as often, and I'll tell you why. You'll see as it, let me just wet it a spot over here. Nice and juicy wet. I'm going to get this real wet, and then I'm going to throw in some Green Apatite. And I want you to see how this granulates. You'll see what happens over time as I go on. And then this one is a newer color I just got, which is Porcelain Green. Very similar to Jadeite, but it doesn't have the same granulating quality as Jadeite. I think it might be. Is it a granulating color? No, it's not granulating. And Jadeite is granulating. This is a little greener. This is a little bluer. I don't know if you can see it on camera or not. And then my last green I have is Phthalo Green. All of these are Daniel Smith colors. But a lot of different companies offer different types of greens that can also help you out. Now, when you look at these greens, sap green on its own, and where'd my Hooker's Green go? No, that is Hooker's Green. Okay, I'm sorry. These two colors, well, especially the Hooker's Green, is really not known to nature. It could be, but I don't see it very often. Sap green, yes, and that's Daniel Smith's sap green. Some sap greens lean more toward the Hooker Green side, and that's a little too much. But then when I think about mixing colors, I will use blues, certain blues. Of course, I'll always use ultramarine. Ultramarine blue is a great mixing blue. So I will use that. This right now I believe is French ultramarine that I have in here, but they're very close to the eye. I will use phthalo blue. And a couple other blues that I like to use are Mayan blue, not Mayan blue deep, but Mayan blue genuine. This one's a pretty one to mix with. And then I also like to mix with indigo, and which is this one, and Indanthrone blue, which is a newer color to my palette. So I love mixing with those colors. I also, if I'm using greens, I will also use some burnt sienna for mixing. And I might use some reds, sometimes a little bit of alizarin crimson, and that should be good. I won't get any of my other fancy colors out. Oh, another one that I liked, and then we get into the yellows. I like to use quinacridone gold for mixing greens. And then if I need a cool yellow, I'll use my Hansa Yellow Medium. This has a little green in it right now, so it's not showing true color. But those two colors I use a lot to mix greens. Now, when I mix the greens, I can mix them with blues and yellows, or I can use my greens that I have on my palette and then add to that. This isn't granulating like I hoped, so I'm going to I'm going to create a bloom there. But what I do quite often is like, let's say I had Hooker's Green in my palette, and I wanted to mix a green for a tree. I might take a little bit of burnt sienna in there, and then it totally changes my green. There's the green that I got from the mix by mixing hookers and burnt sienna. That's a nice, easy color to mix. And you can change this, you can shift the green by adding more hookers to it, making it a little bit brighter, or by adding more burnt sienna to it and making it a little more olive. So you can see that these two colors offer quite a variety of greens right there. So if you want a good recipe and you have hookers and you have burnt sienna, then you're all set to go. That's probably all you would even need. But how about sap green? Let's take sap, and here's sap green, and we'll use burnt sienna again. So now I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna to this green, and right away it gives me a pretty olive color. It looks almost exact to the olive green on my palette. Now if I add a little more burnt sienna to it, it's going to get more of a brownish tone. I need a little more green here. And you can get that color, or you can add more sap to it and get a much greener tone, a brighter green. That looks a lot like my Green Apatite Genuine, only that it's not going to granulate in the same way. Burnt sienna is granulating, so it will granulate a little bit, but my Green Apatite Genuine I won't use in trees because when it granulates, it leaves kind of like black, dirty marks. I love it for ground cover because of those black marks that it'll leave behind, or deep brown marks, but I don't like it in trees. I don't think it looks natural. So if you have sap or hookers and you have burnt sienna, there's something that you can do for mixing certain greens. Now, if let's say you don't use a green at all. I'm going to move this palette to the side for a minute and pull this one out and get back to this. And this palette, this was my new palette of favorites that I'm using currently when I'm out in the field. I have in here, shoot, what's that called? That's Anthraquinoid Red. And then I have Quinacridone Rose and Alizarin Crimson. I have Quinacridone Gold and Hansa Yellow Medium. I have Titanium Buff. I have Brown Ochre. I have Red Oxide, Red Transparent Oxide, or whatever it's called. Let's see what that's called. Transparent Red Oxide. I have, let me get this brush out of here so I can see my names a little better. I have greenish raw umber. You could put regular umber, raw umber I mean. Hematite Genuine. You guys know how much I love that. Payne's Gray. And then on my blues, I have Phthalo, Ultramarine, Indanthrone, and then I have Moon Glow. Now that's pretty much what they have for their palette on the Daniel Smith website, excluding the Payne's Gray. They have Jane's Gray, which you can only purchase in their palette. And what it is it's an exact one-to-one mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. So, and they used, oops, gosh, I got dark color all over me. They used, instead of transparent red oxide, I believe they used burnt sienna, which you could use. I was just into transparent red oxide a bit. I don't know where this dark color keeps coming from, but I keep getting it on me. Okay, I think I'm done now. Okay, so when you look at my palette, I have no green in my palette anywhere, which means I have to mix all of my greens when I'm out in the field, correct? So when I'm out there, I will use my blues, my yellows, and my red transparent red oxide or one of my other reds. So let's take ultramarine, and we'll take a little bit of, pull my water over here a little closer, a little bit of the yellow. I hope it's in, yeah, that's in frame. I'm going to use this yellow, and I will show you, it kind of gives me a sap green color. That's the color I get when I mix ultramarine and yellow. Whoops, I got yellow on my brush still. So now, could I add a third color to it? Sure, you can add a third color to it. But let me tell you, if you're new to mixing colors, your best bet for mixing colors are using single pigment colors. And what that means is that when you see the pigment number on a bottle or on a paint, or if you look it up online, like let's say lavender here, this is a triple pigment color. It's got PW6, PV15, PB29. Single pigment colors would be like phthalo blue, PB15:3. Ultramarine blue is PB29. So you can use colors like that. Your yellows are going to be single pigment. My yellows here are, my Nicolazo is PY150, New Gamboge PY153, got PY1, PY97. And then my Quin Gold is currently PO49. But quinacridone gold has run out. And Daniel Smith was the last to have the single pigment of quinacridone gold. Now they're using I think it's a double pigment to make the same color. But when you're mixing colors, using colors that have only one pigment on them will mean that you're not going to end up with mud at all. Unless you start mixing 4 and 5 together. As you move along, or as you practice mixing colors, your colors are going to get easier to mix. You're going to kind of keep it in your head. So forcing yourself to work with a small palette of just 2 of each primary, a warm and a cool, warm and a cool, like I have warm and cool red, warm and cool yellow, warm and cool blue. That's all you need, and maybe a brown, like your burnt sienna. That's all you need to mix your colors with. That will help you in learning how to mix colors. And it's hard when you buy a palette of colors, you want to use all of your colors, and that's understandable. But when you're out in the field and you have a small palette, you're going to limit what you take with you. And that's what you should take with you, a warm and cool of each. Even when you buy a single palette in a store, you're going to always see warm and cools of each color. Let me grab a couple. Okay, I've got several different ones here. A popular one that people will start out with as students is this Koi watercolor set. It's a nice little watercolor set. They're student pigments. Their light fastness isn't forever, but they are nice to have. And the way this sets up is really nice. But you'll see you've got warm and cool reds, you got warm and cool yellows, you've got warm and cool blues, and so on. So when you look at these here, you would maybe want your permanent yellow and your lemon. You would want a vermilion and a quinacridone rose or a crimson lake. You'd want your ultramarine and maybe your Prussian blue, which is similar to phthalo blue. And then maybe your burnt sienna, they call it light red here. But you'll see this in all of your palettes. Here's a Winsor Newton Cotman palette that I got when I first started painting. You can see I didn't use it for very long. But see how they set it up? Warm and cool yellow, warm and cool reds. These are warm, these are cool. Warm and cool blues. And then you've got your other colors. It looks like I lost my burnt sienna out of it. If you get a White Nights, this is a great little palette. If you're going to get a small palette, this is what I would recommend. These are artist quality paints, and they're terrific. You can see the pigment and how strong they are. But again, you've got your warm and cool yellow, your warm and cool red, your warm and cool blues, and you're all set to go. So you get the idea here. Even the professional Winsor & Newton Cotman colors. This is a little set that I bought that I don't enjoy at all, but I should try and use it again. But they have the same thing here, warm and cool, warm and cool, warm and cool, again and again. So, anyway, that's what you want to do if you're just starting out. Now, with me using this palette, now I've got two colors here. I had my ultramarine and my Hansa yellow medium. What if I want it more of an olive color? Well, I could try adding a little iron oxide to it, red iron oxide. And I got too much here, though. Let me just add a little more blue, add a little more yellow, get this green going again, and then add a little bit of this into it. There we go. And then you can get more of an olivey color. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing, trying quinacridone gold, which I told you makes some beautiful greens, with ultramarine blue. And let's mix them together here on the palette. And look at that pretty green that you get. And again, you can shift it, adding a little more yellow to it. This gives you more of an olivey color of your greens, but they're very natural looking. You know what I mean? Another one. Let's try some phthalo blue and that same quinacridone gold. This is going to give you a very rich green. It almost looks like hookers, because that phthalo blue is just so strong, and the quinacridone gold just sets it off so nicely. Now let's shift it a little bit by adding a little more gold to it. See what happens. It looks like sap green, doesn't it? Very similar. Now, what if you want to make it more olive? You're not going to keep adding more yellow to it. You could try. Let's try, and I'll show you what happens. It gets a little lot more olive, but how about if we add a little bit of alizarin crimson in there? Then look what happened to it. I've got it all kind of watered down here. Let me mix a little more here. There's my green, and then the red. There we go. So you can mix a lot of greens that way. Another one that I like to do for like pine trees, I want to get them real dark, like the jadeite or the rare green earth. I will take my indanthrone blue and my quinacridone gold. This is indanthrone. And look at the green that I get. Looks like rare green earth, doesn't it? It's beautiful. And that is indanthrone blue with quinacridone gold. Let's try it with the yellow, which is a cooler yellow. And we'll add the blue to it. It's almost identical, but let's add a little more yellow. Got that a little too dark. There we go. And now you're back to these colors again. So see, you can shift your colors around so easily. Let's add some alizarin crimson to that. And bam, you've got an olive. Green and red are complementary colors on the color wheel. So if you're going to add red to a green of any sort, even if you've mixed it with blue and yellow, and then you add alizarin crimson or you add your burnt sienna, which I would consider a red when you're mixing, it's going to olive the tone. It wants to neutralize it. And the more you add, the more you neutralize it. If you add an even amount of red and green, you're going to end up eventually with a brown color. There. That's even leaning a little bit to the red side. That could be your tree trunk. Who knows? Although tree trunks usually aren't that brown. But anyway, so that's how I mix my greens. Now, the other person, or the same person, was asking me about mixing straw and, or hay, or brown grasses, and also sand. Sand was a tricky one, but what I used to use was yellow ochre. I don't have it in this palette. I've got brown ochre. So I'm going to just grab my yellow ochre and show you that if you water it way down, you can get a sandy look just by watering that down and spreading it out. Once that dries, it's going to dry very sandy looking. I also wanted to go back and show you this. You can see now how this has got these black kind of granulating marks in it. Really cool for on the ground, but not so cool for in a tree. At least I don't think. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I should try it again, but it just kind of bothered me, so I don't use it as much. I'll use these other greens a lot more. So back to the sand. Using yellow ochre, if you're near the water's edge, you might want to keep it real dark like that, a yellow ochre color. And then as it gets to dry sand, it's just going to fade out. That's what happens. It'll just fade out. So you just water it down a little bit more. And then the sand fades away. Or the sand turns white sand color. That's all you have to do. Here's where the water's touching it, the water line, and then beyond. And you're okay. But I understand the problem with sand. So Daniel Smith makes a color called buff titanium. I think it's used more commonly in like oil paints. You might see it in acrylic. I'm not sure. I can't remember anymore, but I believe I have it in oil. But they make this buff titanium, and this buff titanium is perfect for sand. Absolutely perfect. Look at that. It's already done all the work for you. It's got white in it. So it is a semi-transparent color. But look at that, how pretty it is. But if I need a water's edge, I don't get it with that. So I would go back to my yellow ochre to get the water's edge, where the water is coming up to the edge like that. I would use a darker color. So that's all I would do. Water your yellow ochre down, or spend the money on this buff titanium, which is an awesome color, because you can use this buff titanium to mix some really cool colors. I got too much alizarin crimson here, but you can mix like peachy colors. You can mix really pretty pale. I'm trying to mix on the paper. I really should be mixing on a palette here, but let's try ultramarine and buff titanium. And you get a pretty gray. I think it's mixing in with my green, but you can get some really cool colors. So I love it. You can use it for so much. What was the other question you asked? Oh, about hay. Brown ochre is an awesome color for that. Getting you that straw look. Also, again, your yellow ochre. Now, the opposite on the color wheel would be a purple color. So you might want to add a little bit of blue and a little bit of red in there into your yellow ochre. Let me try that here. We got that. And now I'm going to grab some yellow ochre. Is that yellow ochre? Or am I using raw sienna? No, it's yellow ochre. Okay. Now I got my yellow ochre, and I'm just going to take a little bit of that. And there you go. You got a little bit different color. If you need to make it a little more yellow again, just add a little more yellow ochre to it. Here's your original color, and here's the other two that I got. And I used ultramarine, alizarin crimson, and yellow ochre to mix them together. And there's your hay color. So I hope this helped you, this little mixing recipe video. And if you have any other questions about mixing colors, just let me know in the comments below. If you have any video ideas for me, please put them in the video or in the comments below. Give this a thumbs up if it was helpful to you, if you liked the video. And if you're new to my channel, why don't you subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my videos. If you're having issues with mixing colors, get a piece of watercolor paper out and just start putting your colors down. Put your colors that you're mixing so that you can remember what they are, and then mix them together and make your little recipe card. And that way you can set it in front of you, write down ultramarine, quin gold, and then the green that you got from it, and make a few. Make it a little blue leaning and make it a little yellow leaning. Just play around and you're going to get it. But the yellow ochre mixed with ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson will give you your hay colors that you were asking for. So I hope this was helpful. And remember, everybody, be courageous, paint with wild abandon, and most of all, be kind to each other. Have a great day. Bye-bye.